Hello, welcome to the Korean American Heritage Podcast. I am Han, and I am here with Flip. Hey, Flip.
Hello.
Yeah, we are our. This is actually our second time, but then this will be our first real broadcast since
The
the
practice one.
practice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
The audio was good, but the visual was I kept sticking my finger in my ear.
Yeah. Well, well, people will have to pay to see that version.
Sure. And if anybody guesses how many times I did it, you get a prize. So what's the latest on the coronavirus?
Just a lot more people getting infected. People are more, was it going to wear masks? A lot of articles about wearing masks in public now, so that's good to see. And other than that, I think that's just the hospitals are in the beginning filling into capacities, and so there's a lot of triage places being set up, and
Oh, that's out here because the New York's already toast.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're OD'd over. I mean, that's horrible.
Right. Let me put my mic on off camera view there.
Why?
Oh, just you see like this little black bulb. Just seems a bit distracting. And
Yes.
actually, I just found my closet door. Oh well, it's fine. I'm in the way of it. Like my closet door is open. It's like
Yeah, you're supposed to have a nice backdrop, and can't
right.
you do a virtual backdrop?
Yeah.
That's one of the options.
Uh, yes, there is a
You
way.
could pick the beach or
Um,
sushi bar. I think they have one at the sushi bar. They have one in a pool hall.
yeah, I'll figure that out later. I think it's like some kind of. Oh, that's reaction. Yeah, I'll figure that out later. Anyway,
What do you mean? Aren't you the pro at this?
actually, I use the phone version more than I do with the laptop version.
Mm.
So today's topic actually is I thought we could go back to history.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so today's topic would be was Dosan, I guess, an assassin, I guess? Or Dosan the assassin? Is that more accurate title for our topic?
No, I mean, because he didn't actually assassinate anybody.
Right. But then he ordered the hits.
That's what I think.
Okay.
You know? There's
okay.
there was a um, kind of looking into that about a long time ago, and then people just decided to make him a pacifist.
Right. I mean, when
Like even Arthur Leslie Gardner, the gradualist stuff. But and he wrote about the military things. He wrote a lot about, but for some reason, Christians. It's just and I don't know what people were looking for another answer, so they made Tosan something that he really wasn't.
so he wasn't really a non-violent advocate. I mean, to a certain extent, or
no, I mean violence was a very big part of his strategy. I mean, war, the Great Bloody War, the
right.
Independence Army.
Yeah.
The what is it, the Gun or something like
Yeah.
that?
The combo,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And like the difference between him and An Chung-gun is when you look at the terminology. And Dr. Jackie Park pointed this out, that An Chung-gun's military movement was like a group,
Mm-hmm.
a guerrilla group, where Lee Tong-hui and Tosan were planning an army.
Right.
So that's so so in this day and age, I think it's there's more information that kind of spells out that he was into violence, And part of that violence was like um, Durham White Stevens being assassinated, and in San Francisco. And I think that he was
But-
one that asked, told his people to do that because,
So that was his first call to for that kind of.
I'm not sure because, you know, if you have to start when he was a kid, I mean, what affected him the most was watching the Russian and um, Japanese fight the war in Pyongyang in 1904, 1905.
Right.
And then before that, it was the war up there between. Uh, oh wait, no, that's wrong because he was in America in watching the Japanese and the Russian war. It was the Chinese and the Japanese war in 1890s, 1894, 95 in Pyongyang. And that's when you go back, it's the time of the assassination of Queen Min. And so when you go back to that one, the devastation that happened in Pyongyang was the atrocities and, you know, uh, places getting pillaged, women getting raped, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he witnessed that.
Mm-hmm.
So, when he went to Seoul, the more and more Japanese influence, and he's at the Independence. I mean, at the Kusei Hakdong in 1895 when the Queen gets murdered.
Yeah.
So she got assassinated.
Right.
So
By Japanese, right?
yeah. So these things play on his mindset. So that's why later on, Taesung Hakyo, the school that the Shinminhei set up in Pyongyang, was like a military academy.
Mm-hmm.
It had a good curriculum, yeah, but it also had military training. And they say that it was a training center for the independence movement activists. And so the more and more you look at it, and Yi Gong was another person that these guys all had military background. So Tosan was surrounded by people with military background.
Let's not forget Pak Yeoman, my favorite.
Well, that's the other. They work together a lot, and even the military academies. Because when Tosan was in Mexico, Pak Yeoman had been there before, and there was I think in 1910 there was 110 students at a military academy there. And those guys ended up fighting in the Mexican War.
So he would only call these assassinations for strategic means, or is he like?
Oh no, it wasn't for fun.
Yeah, no, but it's not like kill all Japanese. It's not like.
Oh no, he never. He even told Ito, before. I think he suggested to An Chung-gun that An Chung-gun take him out. Or maybe An Chung-gun had the idea, but so anyway, so Ito, he told Ito, if you guys came as neighbors, instead of coming as conquerors, it'd be a whole different story.
Right.
But and it you look at I mean, I'm sure there's people that are going to argue with it, and nobody really talks about it. Park Geun-sik, who was the second president of the provisional government, wrote about it supposedly. I read it. I've read references to it, and I think it was in a book about Kim Gu. And so he was the second president of the provisional government. So he's writing these things in around 1920, these history. He was a historian as well as, and, he worked with Shin Chae-ho. Shin Chae-ho was the anarchist, and Kim Gu was the security advisor, and Yi Tong-hui, who was the minister of defense and the prime minister, so these are all people that are, and the Air Force idea was his idea. with Nobeknin during the provisional government. So you all these developments, and they all involve some kind of uh, necessary violence. You know.
Has Tosan ever called on violence against other Koreans?
Not not that I know of. I mean, you know, most of the time when it came to Koreans, he was trying to keep the peace.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, like with the problems between Pak Yong-man and Syngman Rhee and the Korean National Association, or the problems between the uh, socialists slash communists and the nationalists at the provisional government. You know, so but I know, you know, he practiced martial arts, those kind of, you know, but I don't think there was ever any you know, because like here's the example, like when he started the Hungsadan to create harmony, he had one representative from each of the 8 provinces. So he was trying to defuse the uh, regionalism and the, you know, the dislike. I mean, like today, I mean, people of what is it, Gyeonggi-do, they don't like the people from Cholla-do. You know, I mean, it's not like it used to be, but
Right, but back then it was more tribalistic, the
yeah,
clan. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, like I find that interesting. I remember reading some of the Hungsudan membership questions, and like, are you willing to give up your life for Korea and Korean independence? I think that was one of the questions that I read, and it's actually seems more plausible now that Tosan could be able to order such, I guess, marks, or I guess using members from the Sudan, because they were so gun ho in regards to devoting their lives to trying
Well,
to
you
get
know,
Korean independence.
it really wasn't members of the Hungsadan. If you
Okay,
were a member of the Hungsadan, that was separate. That was moral character training.
okay,
Um, but also there were the questions that, you know, because he wanted people that were loyal and
right,
courageous, because those are parts of the deal. But most of the like with the assassination of Durham White Stevens in 1908 in San Francisco, that was before the Hungsadan came into existence.
right.
Hungsadan came into existence in 1913, and
Ah, okay,
so those guys were the Kongnapyope, the Mutual Assistance Association. And in those days, that was a direct um, activity motivated by the Protectorate Treaty of 1905, when they already knew that Japanese were taking over.
yeah,
But when the uh, Protectorate Treaty, it became, you know, like ink, you know, writing on the wall. And so by 1908, you know, with the push of what was going on, they could um, you know, see, I mean, people knew the annexation was coming. You know, it wasn't a, you know, it wasn't a secret.
right,
And so, you know, when it came, it changed a lot of things. That's when um, Tosan realized that people had to become more militant, because
uh-huh,
there was no support group um, for Koreans in the United States. There was a support group for the Japanese, you know, in the politics. And then when you go back to what I mentioned before, 1904, 1905, that war, that was funded by the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, you know, so anybody with any sense, political sense, or, you know, could see what the odds were, you know, so America was pro-Japanese, you know, so Durham White Stevens was the spokesperson for the Japanese, reporting to people in America. He was going to go on a tour, you know, and literally saying things like Koreans were stupid, you know. So Tosan was in Korea, you know, in 1907, you know, with the Shinminhei, starting the Shinminhei. So my feeling is, and other people, including John Cha, we've talked about this, that he knew Durham White Stevens was coming to America, and why. He knew all these things were getting more pointed, you know, and there was certain things that Durham White Stevens was supposed to accomplish while he was here in the United States. So You know, who else is in communication? You know, and who's sending cables and letters? You know, so and I don't think those guys would act without him giving some kind of acknowledgement to it.
Um, when Dosan was in prison, he would send letters, and members of his group would ask to read those letters in case there's any code.
Well, that was the Hungsadon,
Okay.
you know, and the KNA people, but mostly the Hungsadon people because they were the ones that were at the house. Because the
So
106 North Figueroa was the Hungsadon headquarters.
do
So
you go on? That's like
so
wondering what.
most of the letters were the ones he wrote to the kids.
Yeah. So
Because my grandmother wouldn't let them read the letters that he wrote to her.
So what were some of the codes? Do you know that they?
No idea.
Okay. None of the surviving Hungsadon members ever said what codes that were involved in.
Well, they probably got lost in the shuffle because the Hungsadon is a joke today.
Yeah, I mean today, but then back then, I was
Well,
curious.
they're all dead.
Right, but then,
You know, they didn't record it. You know, there was no book. You know, or else they lost it. You know, it's you know, the whole thing, you know, went through a change. You know, the Hungsadon in those days, you know, I mean, after 1950, the Hungsadon is basically useless. You know, so they didn't care. You know, I mean, really, today they're just pretty much a bunch of idiots. You know, that are just fumbling around with Tosan's legacy. You know, they don't know how to make heads or you know, they don't talk about any of this stuff. When they go to a meeting, they just regurgitate. You know, it's the old Korean memorization stuff. They
right,
read things. They don't discuss. They don't, and they don't do anything.
right,
You
right.
know? So, but it's not just the Hungsadon because there's a lot of people that were not part of that, like guys in the provisional government. You know, so basically, Tosan said, "You got to stop this guy," and they confronted him at the Fairmont Hotel the night before. They had an argument and they hit him over the head with a chair because he was not going to agree. And then the next day, one guy was from another group, and one of the guys was from Tosan's group. There's Chang Myung-won and Chang and-hwan, or Chun Myung-won and Chang and-hwan. I can't remember exactly, but you know, one was from a non-Tosan group and one was from Tosan's group. And then also, okay, so they shoot him, and the other thing is they kill him in front of the ferry building. They shoot Durham White Stevens.
Yeah,
He dies a couple days later of complications. But the other interesting thing is Hugh Shin. He's in LA and he's working with Mrs. Sherman, the lady that opened up the dormitory and the school and work center. It's a labor thing for it was the Southern Methodist Episcopal Church mission. I think it was down on Olive Street, you know, down near Bunker Hill.
Uh-huh.
So he's here going to USC Theological School. Yeah, so he's studying to be a Moksha.
Yeah.
So when this assassination happened, he was interviewed in 1908 by the LA Times.
Okay.
And he said, and the article is about this guy who's having a conflict of religion, you know, but he said that if they didn't kill Durham White Stevens in San Francisco, because Durham White Stevens was supposed to go from San Francisco over to Oakland, take the train from Oakland to LA, and then go from LA to Washington. And so he said that if they didn't kill him in San Francisco, that he would kill him.
Wow. A person studying to be a minister.
Yeah. No, and they talk about it. You know, it's a long interview for that time, you know, and there's a picture of Houston and he went back. He was, you know, famous independence activist, and I think he graduated in 1911 and went back to Korea. Well, did church work back there.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other thing is when Tosan was here in 1907, when he went back for the Shinminhei, a guy named E.J. Myung went with him, and he's the guy who stabbed Iwan Young trying to kill him in 1909.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and the other thing too is Yi Gong was one of Tosan's right hand guys down in Riverside. He was one of the bosses of the labor, the migrant farm workers, him and M. Chung-gi. And they were military, I think. And right before Durham White Stevens was assassinated, Durham White Stevens got assassinated March 20th, I think, 23rd or something like that. But Yi Gong went from Riverside to San Francisco to meet with people. And I'm wondering if he had something to do with planning what was going to happen, you know, because of a lot of people that were in the circle around Tosan that were planners and decision makers, he was one of the closest. And so he was on his way back to Vladivostok, and they were going to open up a branch of the Kongna Pyope in Vladivostok, and he was in charge of it. And so I think it was February 8th or something like that. He's in San Francisco and leaves for Vladivostok. And sometime around then, he meets An Chung-gun in Vladivostok, because An Chung-gun had been exiled. And An Chung-gun heard Tosan speak in 1907, and An Chung-gun later became a Shinminhei member, and Tosan had known about him, and he had known about Tosan. But supposedly, and I saw this written by Jackie Park, that he was like the head of the Shinminhei Special Task Force, which is like, you know, the Secret Service guys. You know, so, you know, they're both opening schools and stuff and doing this, you know, Save the Nation thing, and An Chung-gun's into guerrilla warfare. But, you know, I'm beginning to think, because, you know, what happens, Tosan has the meeting with Ito, and, you know, he just found out Ito's plan and said, this guy's got to be taken out, you know. And there's mixed coverage, you know, they're saying that that was a mistake because he was a statesman, and, you know, the next resident general was an army general, you know. So, but the more I study and read this stuff, the more disappointed I am in Korean scholars. You know, I mean, it's just like, what are they thinking? You know, it just, you know, a lot of them, you know, are Nam-Heelys, some of the group that used to come over here a couple years ago that were graduate students. I mean, they just had this pathetic, egocentric view that they knew everything because they were Koreans, and I didn't know anything because I was a foreigner. You know, and they had just these, and that one of these women is a teacher. I forget her name, but she actually was a teacher at USC and UCLA, and she had quite an influence on these people. You know, this group of guys and stuff, and it was interesting how the person with the wrong concept became so influential. But anyways, so that's, you know, to me is part of where there were studies, and that was the deal, that nobody really wants to get into the history. Did Tosan tell An Chung-gun to shoot Ito? Or did he just talk about it and suggest it? But, you know, Tosan was the planner. You know, Tosan was the strategist, you know, so, you know, and what the heck happens? Train station in San Francisco, you know, right in front of the ferry building, that kind of he's on his way to get on a train. He's getting on the ferry. You know, it's the same, I guess that's the same setup for an assassination, you know, like when you see Jason Bourne movies, you know, they're guys are at airports or shopping. I mean, it's all set up. It's um, so there's an organizer. There's somebody that and at that time, um, those guys wanted to kill Japanese. I mean, there was not. It was not a. I think it was pragmatic or realistic, because I know Tosan said we got to have a war, but we don't have the money to buy the bullets. We got to do this or we got to do that. But they so that and then I remember reading things where Tosan would cry for days because he sent people into a losing battle. But so and that guy, he was prepared to die himself. How many times did he go to prison?
Yeah.
So the next kind of episode is in 1921, Syngman Rhee, I think, was impeached.
Mm-hmm.
So Park Hoon-sik, this guy that wrote about Tosan, speaking to An Chung-gun, and he wrote Kim Goo's biography, I think, or something. So it's mentioned in that part of it. Becomes the president, and so a couple of years later, Syngman Rhee is impeached, and they put a death warrant out on him. So I think that's why Syngman Rhee was afraid when he found out that Tosan was coming to America in 1924, that he was coming to kill him or have him killed. And that's why he turned him in as a Bolshevik and had him arrested and deported. And so,
yeah, but that didn't seem to enrage. Did it enraged Dosan at all? Being arrested like that? Did Dosan knew who was responsible for that, or?
well, what could he do?
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't like it one bit. And my grandmother really got pissed about it because they came and raided the house.
Right.
But
he later got released.
He got released here, but then when he went to Hawaii, he got deported. Because they had to be careful what they did to him. But once he got in Hawaii, he was out of out of sight, out of mind. And nobody knew right away until he wrote about it, because he said, I had to change my plans and go to Australia because I got deported. So his biggest mistake was supporting Syngman Rhee by far. But he played the odds. I mean, they had no rights. What's he going to do? The American government knew who he was before that. I mean, they let him in the country more than once. When he came in from Mexico in 1918, he went to an American consul in Mexico before he came. And checked in. So.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
So why do historians try to paint him as a pacifist, as a non-violent character, as more like granted, he did like civil rights for Koreans during the Japanese occupation, but like certain agenda seeking I guess what's the right word? Opportunist, yeah. Agenda seeking opportunity.
Well, because like when they have no constituency. A lot of people use Tosan for constituency. Because at the end of the war, there were a lot of people. Who are you with? Are you from North Korea? Are you from South Korea? So people that were associated with Tosan after the split,
mm-hmm.
who were in South Korea, everybody respected Tosan. So if they were attached to them, so it became a facade. It became a veil that people hid behind. And yeah, I mean, it's like Mike Hong Myung-gi. He's the collaborator, Chin Il-pa's son, and he's doesn't have any of the values or character that Tosan requires for members of the Hungsadan, or especially someone that runs the Dosan Memorial Foundation. So it's, it's not supposed to be this way. you know?
Right. But it
It's
is.
it
Or
is, yeah. And so and that's what happened. So people had created all these constituencies based on Tosan or their reputation, and a lot of it wasn't even true. So he just got used and abused. I mean, that guy Ogi Young in 1949 writes the article "The Selling of Tosan." And Syngman Rhee, because in 1948 when Syngman Rhee took over, he was anti-Tosan. People in the Hungsanam went to jail. People from here, the KNA and the Hungsanam, weren't allowed to go back to Korea. So
Mhm.
so um, Syngman Rhee was trying to prevent people from finding out, about how much of a thug he was in Hawaii, how he tried to assassinate Pak Young-man in 1915, and and people try to romanticize history because they don't like when I talk. I don't know if you've been at any of the talks where I get up and everybody else has talked about, like you're the Pungmo part of it. It's the great part of Korean culture. It's music, it's entertaining, everybody likes it. Or food, everybody likes food. History is ugly
Yeah.
because it's the truth, but people want to have this kibun, this harmony, this fake feeling where everything's okay, so we're going to make up history, so we're going to cover it up with God and pacifism and this, and because Tosan's such a great person, we're going to use him as that platform. And it and it's like Trump. He's told so many lies over and over and over. A lot of people think that's the truth. And Ed Chong just spews lies left and right. UC Riverside, Colonel Kim Center is just a factory of fake history. So, and that's a big institution. I mean, who runs that place? What's the president and but there are a bunch of dumb white people that don't even know anything about Korean history, but they listen to this idiot Ed Chong, and he's got to be true because Mike Hong's got all the money. So it's the same thing. Money. They sold Tosan. They sold him out, and the Hungsadon here sold him out. My uncle Ralph, he sold out his dad. He doesn't know any of this, and the oldest grandson Robert On, the pure Korean, same thing. He's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. And the next one, so down the Korean line of tradition, nobody knows his history. And like Wesley, he's a big Christian, so he doesn't want to have anything to do with this part of it. But
But Jesus also flipped tables, though. He, at the temple.
well, there's a lot of I mean, look at the Crusades.
Right.
I'm in church at school at Episcopalian church singing "Onward, Christian Soldier." Off we go to war. Or there's so there's a lot of things, like I think it's Judges 5. There's a story about a woman named Jael,
Uh-huh.
and she kills a guy named Sisera.
Uh-huh.
And so they're talking about justifying killing, because this guy's an enemy of the Lord's people. I don't know if she's like a hooker or something, but there's a story where she entices the guy into the tent and she kills him.
Right.
But she's killing him to protect Jesus's people and the future of Christianity. So the same with the Dalai Lama. I think they had a controversy, because Tosan was a Christian and Tosan was a Buddhist. And I think the most recent controversy for Buddhism was the killing of Osama bin Laden. So they justified it because you're supposed to protect your people or protect, and if this guy's the enemy, there's a reason. There's all these Buddhist and Christian rationalizations for assassination, murder, killing, or whatever you want to have it. But
Well, I would have to argue that in Korean history, the most Christ-like figure is Tosan.
a lot of people say that. There was a guy that when he was alive, he used to tell my mom, he goes, um, you know, I'm a Christian, but I believe in Tosan because I saw Tosan.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. And Tosan was that kind of person. He
Yeah.
was charismatic.
He cared about the tribe. He cared about the Korean tribe.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is I'm trying to remember um, the book. I don't know, it's Harrison or Harris, William Harris. It's a book called Cows, Pigs, Witches, and Warcraft or something.
Uh-huh.
And there's a chapter in there about Jesus, and it's called The Military Messiah,
Uh-huh.
because all the disciples had swords.
Right.
It's like, Peter would be walking in front, get out of the way, here comes the Prince of Peace, and he's got his hand on his sword. So people have twisted everything. It's just um but and what are they doing? It's not like they're in a fuzzy, warm, peaceful time. I mean, the Japanese are going
Right.
around just
Right.
killing people and taking over the country, and you can't speak Korean anymore, you can't wave a Korean flag. They're obliterating the culture. So what are you going to do? And the everybody knows the atrocities, so that's speaks for itself.
But in the Japanese mind, wasn't it empire building?
Well, they were in charge of because America
Yeah,
had
because they see how the Western, like the
well, the
British
major reform.
Empire.
It's a major reform,
Yeah. Yeah.
1868. And so when they see that, they go, "Well, we're going to be responsible for westernizing and modernizing Asia, so we can be the power." So that's what they did, and it was pretty brutal. But those
Not
people.
not to excuse them, but then it's just like
But
that.
that's the way they were. I mean, they went around from the shogunate, from tribe to tribe, cutting each other's heads off. So, the Koreans weren't, just a bunch of peaceful people either.
Right.
you know?
Right.
I mean, what is it, the Three Kingdoms era, where they're marching around up and down the peninsula, killing each other.
But it had its periods of peace, like very prolonged dynasties, like
Well, after somebody conquered somebody, or they made a
yeah,
treaty
like
after.
kingdoms, yeah, like
Yeah.
um, I mean, the longest kingdoms, I believe it's like one of Sheila's kingdoms. It lasts for 900 years, supposedly. So
Yeah, or there's like the E dynasty.
yeah, yeah,
And what did it turn into? Just a big joke with
with bureaucrats and
yeah,
yeah,
a bunch of sellouts.
right, right,
So, I think it's fully like, let's say you're on trial, and there's an argument, you can support it, and people can fight it, but there's not been enough study into it, I don't but
What would you recommend people that want to look into this more further? Where should they start?
I don't know.
Would it be like Jacqueline Park? Jacqueline
Yeah, if you could find
Park?
her dissertation online, that's one of the best.
Yeah.
um Well, I'm sure there's more controversy in Korean about it, because Korean studies in America is a joke. I mean, if you want to learn about pottery or kimchi or silk or K-pop, or there's no, like, I was supposed to speak at the Korean American Bar Association 40th anniversary, which I was very honored that they asked me to speak for a few minutes. And it's been postponed because of the virus till September, and I hope I still get a chance, because I was going to speak about the rule of law and ethics,
Uh-huh.
and those being Tosan's philosophy, and they were shocked when I said, "What do you mean?" They go, "Well, obviously you don't know anything about Tosan's organizational government, judiciary, all these philosophies that he has, or ideals, or things that are put on paper." So it'd be easier to find that stuff out than the assassination stuff.
Right. Right.
But but also, it's like, okay, you're a prime example. Okay, so when you grew up, March 1st was March 1st.
Yeah, independence from Japan. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
how I
So
understand.
now that you've studied,
Yeah,
you see through your family,
yeah.
it didn't just start on Seoul on March 1st.
No, no.
So
There's a
it's
lot of players involved.
and a lot of time and a lot of reasons and good history
Yeah.
involved. But they don't teach it.
There's also a lot of backstabbing Koreans did to one another involved.
But that's what they don't want to teach. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
which I
Parasite
think
the
we
movie.
should.
Look
Yeah.
at Parasite the movie.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's Korean character. That's see, the other thing is people, you know, as far as Tosan was concerned, Korea had no identity as a nation. It
Right.
had no backbone to build a democratic,
Well, the kingdom failed, right? I
yeah,
mean,
feudalism.
yeah,
That's what, it's like, the king and all his rich Yongbun people, they did everything, and the rest of the people just kind of, but there was nothing to really upset him about, except because life was just really simple village life. They farmed, they raised, they sat around and smoked and drank soju, and just pissed in the street, and just they didn't have anything, was it? But they didn't realize how bad they had it until the Independence Club, and until the Capson coup, when they overthrew the kingdom. And so a lot of things changed in 20 years. And then they just, the rest of the world was modernizing, they were just so ass backwards. It was just like, Tosan's going, oh yeah, the other countries are fighting on our peninsula. We don't have any army, we don't have any sovereignty, we can't protect our own. And he was watching people get killed and things get blown up. So
right, right.
so it's, it'd be like if you're in Syria, or if you're a kid, you're 16, or you're on the Gaza Strip, it's whatever, the Gaza Strip, it's like all these things affect you as a young person. And so, that those are the, and why, and so that's, he went off and did what he did for his entire life. But so I think um looking up in the Korean part, if you could do that, would be the way to start. But maybe I should write a paper on it. But I have a few references, but not many. Uh, but that's with the Tosan scholars. They're not independent or critical thinkers. They
Yeah.
just want to maintain their position with the government as a researcher and not get fired. But yeah, so there's Buddhist arguments, Christian arguments, my argument through Tosan's own history. And there's got to be more evidence. There's got to be, or it's like I have the Kwak Nim Day, who was a right, another close associate, follower. Kwak Nim Day's handwritten books in Korean with a pencil called Trench Warfare. And that was for the Independence War.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tosan dealt with death a lot. So I think that I firmly believe that taking a life. And look at my mom. I mean, she went into the Navy to teach people how to kill people.
Yeah, she is a gunnery officer, and
Yeah,
now
so obviously
pilot.
there was,
Yeah,
there
pilot
was,
training officer. Yeah.
yeah, and so many of the Korean American people of her generation went into the service at that
Right.
time, and they wanted to fight the Japanese, so obviously that group wasn't all pacifist. And plus those people have got, had to fight for their rights, and, against racism and, discrimination, and just a hard life, if they were, or all those Pak Young Man's military academies, Tosan, supported those.
Right. Right.
So I think Jackie kind of painted Tosan more as an anarchist, but I think he was more organized than that. Shin Chae-ho was an anarchist, but Shin Chae-ho was in the Shinminhei. Park Eun-sik was in the Shinminhei. An Chung-gun was in the Shinminhei. Kim Gu was in the Shinminhei. Lee Tong-lee was in the Shinminhei. These are all people that are military minded, but I just don't. I think anarchy. Tosan was too organized for anarchy, if that makes sense.
How would you label him? Or he's just enigma? Is that how the right term for it? Or
Well, I just think he's, what some people, the universal mind, that sees everything, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to take little bits of different cultures and literally, he wanted to make Koreans the model citizens of the world.
right. I mean, and he acted like the model citizen in the world.
Well, but there was, other people that were, Chung Mi-uk, Peng Nak-chun, or Yi Gong, all these people and see, that's the problem that my mom had. She witnessed all these great people that were doing great things. And so she had like this emotional amnesia is not the right word, but so when
benefit of the doubt.
Well, no, like when the 80s happening and the Hungsadans becoming more infiltrated by South Korean Hungsadan people. And she just automatically thought because those people were Hungsadan people, they were good people.
Right, I see.
But she didn't realize the Hungsadan was deteriorating, so badly and running out of money. And, so we had these arguments. I go, these people are jerks. They're fakes. Oh no, they'd never do this and they'd never disrespect Tosan. And it turns out that most of them were devout liars. And they ran the Hungsadan into the ground. And then the other problem was the Hungsadan was based on Westernization and some Korean tradition or Asian tradition thinking. Where was it created?
In the States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually they moved the headquarters in the 50s back to Korea. Time passes, there's this going back and forth, all the great Hungsadan guys that were here. And, as they die off, there's less and less people that see Tosan. And so time goes by, then all of a sudden, the new Hungsadan people in Korea think that all of this thinking of the Hungsadan is Korean thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come here, they're going to teach people how to act.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't fit in because everybody's going like, wait, this is the American way of acting. Where, especially the young Korean Americans, and so then they have they can't speak English. They don't like us, and it was a total contradiction to whatever the Korean American pioneer community was. And then there's the racial issue, or I don't know if you call it racial or regional issue, of a lot of the Koreans spoke Pyongyang dialect because most of the Koreans in the beginning were from North Korea, Pyongyang. So you're a Palgangi. What's a Palgangi?
Right.
So it was a whole different. So it just. I just more and more as time gone by. I mean, Tosan just gets dirt kicked on him and buried until Muon Dojan.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But
yeah, speaking of Tosan, I have his picture right on my desk.
I like that picture.
Yeah.
That picture's from Shanghai right before he left.
Ah.
Yeah. In the 30s. Before he got arrested, I should say, not before he left. I think that's when that's from. That's when he was reasonably healthy.
So here's the mastermind here.
Yeah. He always looked so. I mean, that's like
he always looked determined. That's for sure.
Yeah. That picture,
determined guy.
reminds me of Gandhi. But yeah, it's a good picture. It's a nice frame.
Yeah, it looks like he's telling me to clean up my room. So I'm like, it's like, yes, Tosan, I'll get to it.
I think you should put the lights on.
Oh, my Christmas lights.
Yeah,
next,
lighten it up.
next episode, I'll do that then.
Okay, but yeah. So I don't know. I guess I should. Maybe I'll write a paper and you can post it.
Yeah,
If people are
I'll do,
interested.
yeah.
Well, it should be different too now that it's video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I only picked my ear once.
I was the one scratching my face. It's like, oh my goodness, of all times, why now? Yeah, but I tried and do that off camera. Okay, should we end it here?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, cool.
So hopefully
All
this
right.
one comes out okay.
Yes, thanks everyone for listening. I hope this discussion had put some interesting thoughts in your mind and
Wait a
some
minute.
inquiries.
What's in your closet? No, thank you for all the technical
Don't
things.
listen, folks. So
Bringing it to here.
look forward to more episodes on the Korean American Heritage Podcast, and I hope send us an email and let us know if there's any topic you want to talk about on this podcast. And we love you having on the show. All right, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.